Welcome everybody to my other happy place, Samoa Shops, out in Samoa, California, right across the bay from Eureka, California. And my name is Kinetic Carl, and this is my other universe of many tons of locomotive. This is the number 33 locomotive. And sit back and I'm gonna take you on a tour of the shops. We'll try to squeeze it off in, I don't know, I think I can do it in under an hour. Let's try. So that's the 33. It's an all geared, 3-cylinder, 3-truck, 90-ton logging locomotive from the 1920s. Runs on fuel oil, as most California steam engines did of its time period. We've got right here a little monorail car sitting on the ground. Normally it'd be hanging from a monorail, and its wheels are in that boxy structure on top. And of course, here's the gotcha. And this gotcha is laying on its side. I don't want to turn my camera, but normally it hangs from cables from another car, which is hanging out outside because it's too big to get in here and too heavy. Here we have the Mutual Plywood. Once was a Heisler steam locomotive. Back in the 1950s, Mutual Plywood took the steam boiler off of it, the cylinder set, and a little bit of the valve gear stuff and all the hardware associated with the boiler, installed a 6-cylinder marine engine and a 2-speed hydraulic drive inside, made to the shaft drive, which this was a geared locomotive as a Heisler, as a V-twin steam engine. So now, continuing on, trying to keep this short, the train room. Look for that on other videos of mine. I'm not gonna run it here and now, but trust me, it runs. Then we have a decrepit boxcar turned caboose, as lumber companies, to save money in the past, would let their employees take decrepit boxcars and turn them into a place for the crew to hide out from the weather, the rain, whatever, because there just wasn't enough room in the engine for all the crew. And sitting on top of the cars and the weather sucked. A lot of them still did it. On hot sunny days, they'd just ride on top of the cars if they needed a little fresh air while they're riding. Big George, number 15, takes up the entire bay of the engine house, which has 6 bays or stalls. Big George is a rod locomotive, a 282, I believe. And it's fuel oil powered. I believe it was no, this one was built fuel oil and ran fuel oil for all its life, never converted, just built big. It was the engine house that was converted to fit it. You'll see the other stalls are slightly different arrangement. This one actually has a raised roof in that front section because the roof was too low for Big George to get in without colliding into it. Here we have number 7, Arcata. Oh gosh, no. Oh, I totally beefed that one up. Okay, here. Rather than me and my post-chemo brain, let's just, here you go. Arcata and Mad River Railroad. There. Okay, it's a 2-truck, 3-cylinder Shay. Again, another logging locomotive, gear powered, and the boiler, just like the 33, the boiler is offset. And we can't really sit in front of it, but you can kind of get the drift when I go through the gap here that something looks off center. There's the coupler, there's the boiler, there's the coupler, there's the boiler, there's the coupler, and there we're pretty much on center with the boiler now, and you'll look down and it's not on center. So they did that to make room for the cylinders, as well as to kind of counterbalance the weight of the cylinders. The only time she's really unbalanced is when she doesn't have water in her boiler, which you should almost never have unless you're working on it. This is kind of what I call the non-show side on a Shay. There's nothing. People go, it's a steam locomotive, where's all the rods? Well, you got to look on the other side, and instead of rods, it's gears. So then the final stall, the Pacific Lumber Company number 29, was a wood-fired Baldwin, then converted to fuel oil to make it easier to fire up in the mornings and less smoky. This is a 262 locomotive. Go out on a limb, somebody will probably call me on it, but I think that makes it a Pacific. I don't know. Number 29. Oh, here. We've got it set up. And here I'm gonna we'll go around the locomotive and out the door. I forgot to go out the door earlier. Here. We wanna give you the full view of the engine house, so I'm gonna walk you along the side of it here. You can kind of look at the bits as we go by. That is a re-rail block. In case you come off the rails, that helps you convince the locomotive to get back on. You do have to use a lot of chain to do that, to get the locomotive back on. If you don't have heavy lifting equipment or can't get it in the area, chain is your next best friend. Have pardon the diesel truck rumbling by. Samoa Peninsula Fire Department is monitoring not a fire, but they're monitoring some plumbing work being done, because I think it includes the fire main to some degree. They're kind of like the waterworks out here for this part of this was all a factory town at one time. So there you are, all 6 stalls of the engine house. So stall 3, you can see, has been modified. Back in the day when this engine house was built, the locomotives were much smaller, even smaller than the Pacific there, and or number 29. So this track right here, just staring at it, I can see that this is not how they intended it to come out of the engine house, because just standing here, it's already crossing this stall. So I'm pretty sure right out of the engine house, it starts into a turn, and almost immediately after that turn goes into a switch, which I think goes for that stall. Then I think the next switch takes care of these 2 stalls. I suspect they did it in pairs. So there's 3 switches out in front of the engine house here, kind of feeding like that. And then there's another switch that splits and feeds those 2, and then you're onto the single spur to get to the engine house. That'll be fun to put together. I think we're for sure gonna get this stall, and I think we're gonna ignore the rest and just later on in life add, and that'll mean playing with stuff out here. We're doing all this on surface, so it's basically a toy train set, and FRA does not care if it's a toy train set. We still have an FRA, well, a locomotive that would meet FRA standards. We have one right now in an engine house, ready to go. We just don't have trackage, and that's what we're doing now, is we're building some trackage. So let's go through. We've been through the engine house mostly. Oops, I skipped the saw room. Maybe we'll finish there. We're gonna make a complete loop of this, is my plan. So we're going for the 1916 Pullman cars, and we'll start at the parlor car. See if Lola wants to come. Last time we were here, she hid away. I think she was after a critter or a cat or something in one of the cars. Come on, Lola. She's helpful. I run it through once just to scare any critters that might decide to come in while the cars are open. But here you are. Look at that. This is the parlor car. And so it can have 2 private party kind of bookings, one larger, one smaller. Or if you have a really large demanding group, the staff can be in the other room doing their bit to tend to the folks in this room. Or maybe the other way around, depending on how much paraphernalia each crew needs. Don't know what that tape's about. I think there was a sign on there reminding folks to wear their masks. I'm all alone here, so now we are entering the dining car. Going down this narrow hallway, we are circumnavigating the kitchen. And here, we'll just come around the corner. There's the kitchen, so I don't forget to show it. It's looking pretty good. I think they've got, what, lunch getting ready here? I can just smell. Oh yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't touch those. They've been sitting there for years. I guess there's enough preservatives there. So we got to keep this up. I'm not going to do a detail of each room, just kind of give you a look in there. We're at 10 minutes so far. I think I can do it. So there, we're going to turn around and give you the full view of the dining room from the entryway. Isn't that just spectacular? Now watch this. This S-turn here, I think is really cool. So you don't get to see down the length of the car. It gives that dining room some privacy aspect to it. And it also adds kind of an allure, you know, going through that wall. And the one thing it does do is it gives them a piece of furniture at the end of the room that just really makes the rooms just pop. And then the lighting, we can dim that down, but we're gonna get on our way. So now we're going into the sleeper car, or what do they call business car. This is the first kitchen. This is what I call the hot kitchen. There would be that's not a real accurate stove there. It is a stove, but it's not the right era. But then the prep counter, there's a little bit of ice box in there. Not refrigerator, but ice box. Then this is the cold kitchen side. This is where they'll be prepping the salad, putting fruit on the plate, kind of dressing them up, getting ready to send them out the door. Crew's quarters, 3 bunks in here, one closet, and then a shower stall around the corner. They have their own private shower. All the crew uses. And then this is one of the berth, or whatever, suites. And then there's a common door into the bathroom, which the bathroom door, there we are. Pardon, we're still in the process of rehabbing it a little, so it's a little shabby, but it's all here. Isn't this just the coolest? They have a shower in here. There's a sink. And this is the kind of toilet that back in the day just collected right on the track, and then later was fitted with modified toilet that then would pay into a tank, and just like an RV from that point on. This is the office, or the second room, and I'm just in the hallway now. So there's the door to the other room. There's no door directly to the bathroom. Oh no, yes, there's a hall door, so you don't have to go through a suite to get to the bathroom. You can just go straight in. So I think that also doubles when the train is not with guests, that just doubles as a staff bath or second bath for whoever might be in the subsequent cars. So now we're going out the back and looking back into what would be a glamorous, and imagine like, not Abe Lincoln. Maybe if I was Trump, I would think it was Abe Lincoln would be in here making a speech, but this car is somewhat after him. So it'd be more like a Teddy Roosevelt or something like that, or Ike making his speech out here on this, somewhat not the way it was originally. Somebody got off with the hand railings around this a long time ago, but that's easily reproduced. We just haven't, our metalwork shop hasn't taken that on yet, but believe me, it's on the list to make this look authentic rather than just safe. Okay, so we're going to continue on. We've got a few cars out here. This is our boneyard is down that way. And now we're going to go into what is the machine shop. Back in the day, the locomotives would be in the engine house. They would back out of the engine house and into the boiler shop, get their boiler lifted off, and then roll out the back doors of the boiler shop and into the far door of the machine shop. And in here was all the machinery and heavy lifting equipment hanging from the ceiling. There's these booms. It can swing around and used to be you can use them to lift weight. Back before forklifts, this building just was crazy with machines and ways of lifting and rolling heavy materials around in the air to where you needed to lower it down to a machine to work on it. So anyhow, we're at 14 minutes, and this is the number 3. This is the infamous locomotive that ended up on its side in the bay back in 1923. And the story behind that is there was this resided in an engine house just where Samoa Bridge touches down in Samoa, you know, if you're coming across the bridges from Eureka, that final bridge, right where it touches Samoa, well, just off to your right, there used to be an engine house there, and this engine resided in that engine house. And the crew, the weekend crew, was maintaining the locomotive, doing some repairs and whatnot, and they left the throttle slightly open. And somebody had bumped the Johnson bar, that I think, or bumped, I don't know if they knowingly, but they had left it slightly in reverse. And the Monday morning crew failed to check the controls in the cab and hooked it up, you know, filled the locomotive with water and lit a fire in it and hooked it up to house steam in the morning as it was a cold locomotive. And they went up to the cookhouse to go eat breakfast while it was going to fire up. Well, with that situation going, no park and brake set or nothing, the engine backed out of the engine house, and along the run of our railroad tracks, there's competing railroads whose tracks crossed each other, and these companies would put derail gear on the other company's rails in the effort to slow down the other company taking their lumber to market. So you'd have to, every time you went down that length of track, you'd had to check and make sure that you were safe to go through there. You weren't going to derail your train. And if there was derail gear on your rails, you'd unbolt it and put it on the other guy's track and then move on your way. And so this train had nobody in it, so it didn't know, and it backed right over that derail gear and ended up on its side in the bay. So this is not a historically significant forklift, but we have a lot of heavy stuff here and we have to be able to lift it. But behind it that's an old logging bulldozer. And they would haul the log arch, which is behind it, and they were cutting down some pretty sizable chunks of tree back in the day. And to haul a chunk of tree through the forest that's some 150, 200 feet long, you need to be able to lift up one end and then drag the rest of it through the forest. And this was your thing. And they used to do it with ox, and then they learned that ox were a challenge, and somebody had invented a motor, and they figured out how to hitch that motor to some tractor wheels and tractor treads, and then all of a sudden they were hauling logs. So this is all kinds of different equipment related to millwork and trains and saw equipment and just water pumping gear and lifting gear and just tons of stuff for manufacturing stuff. Kind of giving you the quick tour. Now we're on to, these are what you control the switch tracks with. And these will probably be going out front soon if we or I think we have better examples. Yeah, we have some ones that aren't bent. We have clean ones that look good. They're here, I know I've seen them. I don't know where they're at though. So boom lifts, there's one right center of the picture, just right atop it looks like it's touching the smokestack, is touching it, but no, they're not touching, that's just in the way. But you see that's a boom lift. That one can go completely 360 degrees in a circle. It has a rail. It has a rail that runs the length of that boom pretty much. I mean, it only lets you, let's see, here we are. The rail stops right about there. You can get the cable to go through here if you're dropping a cable down from the hook on it. But it does about a 10-foot sweep. So you get a donut-shaped area that thing can reach. So that was, they kind of figured out where they like them, and they put them there, and then they use them to lift heavy objects. I think we're right in line. This red post is right next to one. You can kind of see it swung over at a weird angle, pointing at that window kind of. That's this line I'm referring to. That's the boom. And this thing doesn't swing all the way around because this post doesn't move. And then there's a little bit of rail system left, but believe me, when we first got, these shops, this is what was here in the air. I think they did pull one piece out of here because they wanted to be able to get big forklifts through, and it was in the way. But this rail system there were several runs across here back in the day. The photos I've seen, this place was really busy with stuff. Plus, there was also some belts spinning around up there back in the day. Machines didn't have their individual motors. Okay, whoops. So this is all my steam display stuff. We're at just under, there's 20 minutes so far. I think we're gonna make it. This is all various different, like, this is part of a sawmill. It's all just been lumped here in a corner, or kind of not in a corner, in the middle of the shop floor, kind of all bunched together, not in its appropriate setup if it were a display. This is because we needed floor space. If we had the floor space, I'd have it all spread out so it'd be more of a tour instead of a bunch of stuff all jammed together. But there's several mill engines in here, but the big green one, I'm trying to get you a clear shot of that. There we are. That was one of my restores. You can look, there'll be a YouTube video on this one from way back. We're not gonna be steaming it up for a while because its source of steam is right here on blocks, getting the beginnings of a retube. And tube, these holes right there, there's actually a bit of plumbing that goes from this end all the way to this end. You can see through that, that'd be the firebox door. This thing's laying on its side. Normally it'd be standing upright. But all those tubes have got to go. And then there's also a tube plug right there. That one that doesn't look like a hole, because it's a plug. See if I can get in there without that wash of light. Oh yeah, there, you can see it real clear now. But yeah, we're looking through about 41 inches of tube, and those are from the 1980s. So they have well gone past their age, and rather than have an embarrassing tube blowout. A tube blowout on this wouldn't be disastrous because it's a wood fire. The only way it could be disastrous is if I had a raging fire under there with really amazing firewood, which we don't have. We're just burning pine, and it's not the sappy kind of pine. It's and fair bit of, I think there's some redwood in there too, which again, it's kind of low BTUs. So you'd really have to lay into it. And then the way this is built, when that's standing upright, that boiler just washes the, if it has any kind of leak, whatever, that water lands on the fire and just extinguishes it. If this were a gas fire, that'd be a different story, because the flame would, the structure of the flame would be more concentrated, and the water would kind of boil as it hits the top of the flames, and not, you know, because it's shooting rather than just kind of licking off of the wood. I don't know. Anyhow, you can't just put out fuel oil fire with water. You gotta suffocate a fuel oil fire. And tube breaking wouldn't do that. It'd just be a sudden rush of water. The leak that we did have back in the day was a trickle, and you could just hear a psh, psh, psh. And all our locomotive leaks have been the same thing, just a tiny little kind of, little psh, psh sound as it leaks. Okay. Wow, I think I did too rushed. Okay, so here, let's talk about this thing a little bit more. So this is the boiler. It stands upright. It's part of what's called a steam donkey. People go, why a donkey? Well, kind of like ox, donkeys were also used to haul the log arch. The problem is around here is you had to have a whole herd of donkeys to be able to pull a log, where with about 4 or 5 ox, you could pull a log through the forest. Oxes weighed more and were way more stronger, hence the term strong as an ox. So anyhow, this first, before they brought ox up here, people were using mules because they were cheaper, and they came up from Mexico and they were super cheap. And you could get a gazillion of them, and so donkeys were the thing at the time. And then of course somebody came up with a steam engine, and then somebody else came up with a way to attach it to a skid. And that steam engine, you can see the crank here, and the piston's kind of hiding back there, and it goes boop, boop, boop. And this spins, and then it has a big gear there, and you have some mechanical advantage. This small gear goes around this really big gear, so it has to do a bunch of turns to get that gear to turn once. So these things were cool, because even though they don't have wheels, people all, how do you move them? Well, nobody had a wheel and axle system strong enough to hold the weight of a boiler at the time, so they just put them on sleds, and they would use the spool and a rope coming off and sink an anchor into the ground or tie off to a tree, fire the thing up, and just drag itself through the forest on skids. Every now and then you had to reskin your skids depending on what kind of soil you were traveling on. Around here, our forests were a lot of redwood duff and moss and pretty easily skiddable material. So you made skids, they lasted longer than the boiler did. So I've got all kinds of cool things hooked up to this. This is a mechanical water pump that'll fill feed water into the boiler. It's really cool. We also have a siphon type where it just uses the speed and weight of water to suck more water in. You're just accelerating a column of water, and that water's got low pressure compared to a standing column of water. So the high pressure standing column of water pushes into the space of the low pressure moving water, and hence you have a pump. It's a really cool trick to take advantage of Mother Nature. Then a really big pile of tools. You have to have just about every one of those to take this down to where it is. Over here, I have a complete a steam donkey kit, do it yourself. The only problem is there's no printed instructions, but I very carefully designed it all and made it all with quick connections, so I don't have to really unscrew plumbing. I just undo the unions, and then everything just pops apart in little chunks, and it makes it super easy. I did this while I still had it was just shortly after I got off of surgery, and they said I could start moving around again, like 8 weeks after surgery. And so I would be over. It took me, normally this would be an afternoon without cancer. I could do, pop this whole thing apart in about an afternoon and have the boiler setting where it is. And it took me weeks with cancer, because all the chemo and what the cancer did to me and everything else, knocking my energy back. I could do a couple of tasks, and then I needed to sit down for a while, not take a nap, but just sit down and chill. Because if I didn't, I would soon get migraines and just kind of like tapping the wrong energy or something, not sure what. But isn't that cool? And that little orange speeder, I don't know a whole lot about that. I think it's one of our volunteers owns it or donated it. I don't know the details. Josh Buck will know what to say there, I think. So anyhow, let's go to the boiler shop. And eventually I got to go open up the car barn, as the trolley is going to come back here. We had got it all set up with a parking spot in downtown Eureka. Really nice thing to have. Oh, I forgot to turn the 29 off. We'll get that in a little bit. But anyhow, well, here, we'll do it on the way. So they're working on the cookhouse had to close. They've got plumbing issues. They can't operate the grease trap gadget. It's not actually, it's pre-sewer. It's a grease trap out in the hillside here, and you really need it with the cookhouse. That's some old school American food there. Good old artery choking. So here we go. Lola knows where we're going now. This is the boiler shop. We're going in the little door on the big door. So now back in the day, this would be equipment and stuff for working on boilers here. This is now actually our machine shop, in that when we got the shops, the machines in the machine shop were all gone, and some were in our possession, but not in the shops. We had them stored away, and now they all made it over here. Plus we got more donations over the years. So these are lathes with keep them from rusting. You put oily rags, well, you oil them down and you put towels and rags and blankets over them. This is a big, huge DC powered lathe. Really beautiful piece of equipment. Use that to turn wheels. Now, once we've come all the way in this shop, if you look up, to lift boilers off of locomotives, there's these, you see this oops, where's my hand? This beam right here and this beam right here, well, there's rails on top of those beams. And we'll follow this one back, and you'll see that that beam is open, no posts on top of it, all the way down to the end where the trolley gantry system is. See this thing going across here? It says 3 tons. There's wheels on there, and it can go, and then it has this thing that can go back and forth with a cable on it, and it can pick up and set down stuff. And there's ladder at the end of the building to get to it. And then those 2 here and here are actually for working on the lighting. These big lights that hang from the ceiling. I used that gantry to take out the light there and there. We've only left a few up there. It had a lot more lights in here, but we weren't looking to fund PG&E that seriously. So we've removed some of the lighting down to just what we felt was necessary. And the inspector at the time just wanted to see all the old conduit gone. So we had removed all the old conduit, and then we re-conduited. Yeah, there were some spots where he didn't like the looks of the rusty bottom on the conduits and felt that you need to replace all that if you want to keep. So this is one of our new acquisitions. Pre-COVID, just right before COVID, it got purchased and cleaned up and painted, and we thought it was all well and good to go. They ran it a bunch of times by itself, used it to haul a couple of cars one time. Then when we went to try and haul one more, so we'd be hauling 2 more cars, going across a right-of-way, the axle that is missing right now broke and left us with our test failed right then and there, right the first 10 minutes of the test. So we're in the process of some pretty ancient equipment, and so we're looking to replace some parts. This is the reverser box. I've got it wide open, some of the reverser parts. There's some crown gear or ring gears over, I think we have them over here. We were snapping pictures of them and looking at numbers, part of the ring gears for that box. I think I'll put them back over with the other equipment so that they don't grow legs. If somebody doesn't know that mission's going on, that's not the normal bench for that. So we'll bring it over here. And this axle was bent. I straightened it at the house. I used my 20-ton press, some V-blocks, and going back and forth between bending on it and then chucking it between centers on my lathe, and then doing the best I could to get it concentric along its length. I was like, am I OCD? Kind of like a kid with a paper clip who takes that paper clip and just makes it perfectly straight. I was kind of wondering if I was, going nuts. So then we have what we call the nut and bolt room back here. There's some mega boxes. This is when working on a project and you need a nut and a bolt or some kind of bit of something. This is an automotive section, and the big gnarly bolt section, and the not so big and gnarly bolt section. All screws, brushes, fasteners, hinges, just crazy. Yeah, like our own little private hardware store that sometimes has the parts you're looking for the right price. This is my plumbing section. Kind of have it grouped. And then specialty brass and bronze gadgets. We have enough time on my hour here that we are going back to the engine house. And I want to show you the train because I think we have time. I guess when I'm thinking of a 1-hour tour or more, that's with people asking questions and we pause and talk. And I've been kind of hustling this whole thing. I know I've skipped a lot. There's old Herbina. Hey, and this will be good because we can turn the headlight off on the 29 and save on the PG&E. So come around here and we'll go take a look at the Lionel setup that I put together. There we go. Go past the Bear Harbor. Whoops. You know, I don't think I mentioned that. This is a Bear Harbor #2 locomotive. Its sister is up at California State Park's Fort Humboldt. I think that's more the plumbing guys. Yeah, they're going around the back of the building, I think. Oh, no, that's who I'm waiting on. All right, this video is going to come to an end here soonly. We'll run the train while Rod gets here. So check this out. I built this while I was dealing with cancer. A little bit every time I come here. I'd work on it for maybe an hour. So it seemed like every time I just go get to work and I'd have to take a break. Kind of modeling Humboldt Bay and Lionel. Not totally possible to get it accurate, but it's for kids. So right now it's at the Eureka end of the line. And there is a balloon track in Eureka, but it's not arranged like the balloon track I have here, but it's close enough. It's Lionel too. Oop, wow. Needs to warm up. I like the fact that it didn't stop, it just slowed down. Yeah. All right, so Kinetic Carl signing out here at Samoa Shops, well under an hour.